I want to tell you about a conversation I had in 2019 that I still think about. I was sitting across from a 40-year-old engineer named Daniel. Smart guy, 2 degrees, respected at work. He told me he'd been planning to switch careers for 7 years. 7 years. He had notebooks full of research. He'd watched hundreds of hours of tutorials. He knew exactly what he needed to do. But he hadn't done any of it. And when I asked him why, he said something that stuck with me. I know what to do. I just can't seem to do it. That sentence describes millions of people. The gap between knowing and doing is where most dreams go to die. Not from lack of information, from lack of execution. In the next 20 minutes, I'll show you why knowing doesn't lead to doing, the 3 psychological traps that keep people stuck in this gap, and a specific framework you can use starting tomorrow to finally close it. This isn't about motivation. It's about mechanics. Here's what most people believe. If you know enough, action becomes easy. Learn the steps, follow the plan, get results. But that's not how human behavior works. You already know what you should do. You know you should exercise, save money, build skills, have difficult conversations. The information is not the problem. The problem is the gap between your knowledge and your behavior. Let me give you a scenario you'll recognize. You watch a video about productivity. It makes perfect sense. You feel inspired. You tell yourself, starting Monday, I'm going to implement this. Monday comes. You don't do it. By Wednesday, you've forgotten the video entirely. Knowledge fades. Behavior persists only when it's practiced. The 3 layers of knowledge. Layer 1, information. You've heard it. Layer 2, understanding, you comprehend it. Layer 3, integration. You live it. Most people stop at layer 2. They understand concepts, but never integrate them into daily life. That's the gap. There's research from behavioral psychology showing that knowing a behavior is beneficial has almost no correlation with actually performing that behavior. Smokers know smoking is harmful. People with debt know they should budget. Knowledge alone doesn't predict action. What does predict action? Systems, environment, friction design. In a moment, I'll explain the 3 psychological traps that widen this gap and why intelligent people fall into them more often than others. Let me show you the 3 mechanisms that keep people stuck between knowing and doing. 1. The research trap. Some people use learning as a substitute for doing. This is the story of my friend Ethan. From 2017 to 2020. Ethan wanted to start a freelance writing business. He spent 2 years researching. He bought courses. He read books. He joined forums. He even had a folder on his desktop labeled Business Strategies with 147 saved articles. But he never wrote a single pitch. When I asked him why, he said, "I'm still preparing. I want to be ready." Here's the truth. Preparation became procrastination. Research felt productive. It created the illusion of progress without the risk of failure. The research trap is especially dangerous for intelligent people because learning feels like work. Your brain rewards you for consuming information, but consumption is not creation. Takeaway: set a research deadline. After 10 days, you must take 1 action, even if it's imperfect. 2. The perfection trap. Some people won't start until everything feels perfect. Story: Victor, 2015 to 2018. Victor wanted to launch a YouTube channel about urban design. He wrote scripts. He bought lighting equipment. He planned thumbnails, but he never published a single video. His setup wasn't professional enough. His voice sounded weird on recordings. The camera angles weren't right. 3 years passed. 0 videos published. Meanwhile, someone else in his city started a similar channel with just a phone camera and poor audio. That person now has 80,000 subscribers. Perfection is a shield against judgment. If you never publish, you never fail, but you also never succeed. Takeaway: launch when you are only 60% ready. Improve publicly, not privately. 3. The identity trap. Some people build an identity around becoming rather than being. Story Elias, 2014 to 2021. Elias introduced himself as an aspiring entrepreneur for 7 years. He talked about ideas constantly. He went to networking events. He had business cards printed. But he never registered a business, never made a sale, never launched a product. Aspiring became his identity. It was safer than claiming the title and risking failure. Here's what most people don't realize. Identity follows action, not the other way around. You don't become a writer by calling yourself one. You become a writer by writing. Takeaway: stop using aspiring language. Do the thing first, then claim the identity. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, which trap are you in right now? Are you researching endlessly, waiting for perfect conditions, or using aspiring language to avoid commitment? Name it out loud if you're alone. Acknowledgement is the first step. The 4-step execution framework. Step 1. Commit to one thing. Most people fail because they try to change everything at once. Instead, choose one specific behavior to execute for 30 days. Not get healthier, not be more productive. Make it specific. Write 200 words before 9 a.m. or make one sales call before lunch. One behavior, 30 days, nothing else. Step 2. Design minimum viable action. What's the smallest version of this behavior you could do, even on your worst day? If your goal is exercise, your minimum viable action might be put on gym clothes. That's it. This removes the activation barrier. Once you're in gym clothes, momentum often carries you further. But even if it doesn't, you've maintained the behavior chain. Lucas wanted to read more. He set a minimum viable action. Open a book for 2 minutes before bed. Some nights he read for 30 minutes. Other nights, just 2 minutes. But the behavior persisted. After 6 months, he had finished 18 books more than he had read in the previous 5 years combined. The trick? He removed the pressure of finishing and focused only on starting. Step 3. Create forcing functions. A forcing function is a constraint that makes inaction harder than action. Examples: social accountability. Tell someone your plan and ask them to check in weekly. Financial stakes. Prepay for something: a course, a trainer, a deadline. Public commitment. Post your progress once a week where others can see. Forcing functions work because humans respond more strongly to external pressure than internal motivation. Carlos wanted to finish writing a book. He announced publicly that he would publish 1 chapter every 2 weeks. He set up a simple website where people could subscribe. Within 6 months, he had 200 subscribers waiting for chapters. The external expectation people waiting became the forcing function. He couldn't let them down, so he wrote. Step 4. Track behavior, not results. Most people track outcomes: pounds lost, money earned, followers gained. But outcomes are lagging indicators. They show up late. Track behavior instead: days you exercised, calls you made, words you wrote. Behavior is a leading indicator. It predicts future outcomes and gives you immediate feedback. KPIs for execution. Streak count. How many consecutive days did you perform the behavior? Completion rate. What percentage of planned actions did you complete? Recovery speed. When you missed a day, how quickly did you restart? You don't need dramatic change. You need consistent behavior. Small actions, repeated over time, become identity. Let me address the three most common objections to this framework. I don't have time. You have time. You're using it on something else. Fix. Audit your day. Write down what you did every hour for 3 days. You'll find pockets of wasted time scrolling, watching, waiting. Reclaim 20 minutes. I keep losing motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like weather. Fix. Build systems that work without motivation. Set triggers. After I pour coffee, I write for 10 minutes. The trigger removes the decision. What if I fail again? You probably will. Most people fail multiple times before succeeding. Fix. Redefine failure. Failure isn't stopping. It's not starting again after you stop. As long as you restart, you haven't failed. Remember Daniel, the engineer from the beginning? I saw him again in 2022. He'd finally made the career switch. Not because he suddenly became motivated, because he applied a forcing function. He signed up for a 12-week boot camp that cost $3,000. Non-refundable. The financial stake and the cohort structure forced him to show up. Within 6 months of finishing, he'd landed his first client project. The knowledge was always there. What changed was the system. He told me something I'll never forget. I spent 7 years thinking about it and 6 months doing it. I should have just started badly 7 years ago. Here's what to do right now, not later, not Monday, right now. Action 1. Choose one specific behavior to execute for 30 days. Write it down. Action 2. Define your minimum viable action, the smallest version you can do on your worst day. Action 3. Create one forcing function. Tell someone, prepay something, or commit publicly. Action 4. Track behavior daily. Use a simple checklist. Check the box every day you do it. That's it. 4 actions. No complexity, no hype. The gap between knowing and doing doesn't close by itself. It closes through deliberate, repeated action. You already know what you need to do. The question is, will you do it? Here's what to do right now, not later, not Monday, right now. Action 1. Choose one specific behavior to execute for 30 days. Write it down. Action 2. Define your minimum viable action, the smallest version you can do on your worst day. Action 3. Create one forcing function. Tell someone, prepay something, or commit publicly. Action 4. Track behavior daily. Use a simple checklist. Check the box every day you do it. That's it. 4 actions. No complexity, no hype. The gap between knowing and doing doesn't close by itself. It closes through deliberate, repeated action. You already know what you need to do. The question is, will you do it? You started watching this because part of you knows you're stuck in the gap. That awareness is valuable. But awareness without action is just anxiety. Tomorrow morning, do one thing. The smallest meaningful action toward what you've been avoiding. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just do it. Then do it again the next day. And the day after that? Knowledge gave you the map. Execution is the journey. Stop planning. Start walking. The gap closes one step at a time.